Hey guys, I'm DK Analyst Peter Jennings, and I'm going to be doing lineup reviews for week 2. So let's dive into the teams here and the lineups that won all the money this week on DraftKings. The Dugan brothers, congrats to them on taking home $2 million. Great story. If you want to see more of them, check out DKTV. We got a good interview during the Monday Night Football game, and they were a fun duo, the brothers. They definitely had some interesting comments and some funny things to say, and big congrats to them. So their quarterback was Marcus Mariota. Let's take a look at him here on the player card. Marcus Mariota had a decent game, 18 fantasy points. Certainly, not the best game, but really you didn't need a huge game from your quarterback this week, as we saw. Ben Roethlisberger was the highest scoring guy, and Mariota was only 15 points behind him and significantly cheaper than Ben Roethlisberger. So not a dud game, but not a great game from him either. It's going to be interesting to see if he can have a big game with his legs here going forward. I think that's certainly where he has the most fantasy value going forward. Next guy is D'Angelo Williams. Huge game from him. We saw him in the perfect lineup, and we'll see him continuously on these big lineups. 20 carries for 77 yards, so not the most efficient running, not a great yards per carry, but man, 3 rushing touchdowns did where he count, and he caught 4 balls, which is huge on DraftKings with a point per reception. So big game from D'Angelo Williams, and a lot of good information here on the player card. You can see their game log, you can see the matchup specific stuff, and you can obviously see here what he's done at a glance. Danny Woodhead, also on the Dugan brothers lineup, had a nice game here. Not a huge game, but again, there's so many duds at running back. You could afford to have a dud in your lineup and still take home these big GPPs. The game wasn't huge. He had 7 carries for 36 yards, but where he really did his damage was catching the ball, and that's his value. 6 catches, 68 yards, which is huge on DraftKings with a point per reception. Next guy is Travis Benjamin. We talked about him in the perfect lineup. He is a great play every week in GPPs because of the big play upside. 3 catches for 115 yards, so not many catches, but doesn't matter when you get 2 of them for long touchdowns. Plus, he had the punt return for a touchdown. So great week for Travis Benjamin, elite upside type player. He's relying on the big play, but that's fine in tournaments. Not really a cash game guy, but he's certainly a guy you can take advantage of in these tournaments. Next guy we have here is Antonio Brown. Enough can be said about this guy. 9 catches back-to-back weeks, has a touchdown both weeks, over 100 yards both weeks. He's just as consistent as they come at the receiver position. He is obviously a big play guy as well as a cash game guy because he racks up so many catches. Antonio Brown is matchup proof and certainly someone you want to take advantage of by having him in your DraftKings lineup week to week because he just has so much upside. All right, next guy, Julian Edelman. Interesting play here. 11 catches against Buffalo. At 11 catches the week before. Almost identical games, week 1, week 2, both weeks. 11 catches for 97 yards. That is massive in point per reception leagues like DraftKings. So I think Edelman is going to be a guy you can look at going forward week to week because of the PPR upside that he possesses. All right, Rob Gronkowski, Gronk. We talked about him already as well. He is a monster. He's, like I said, he averages more touchdowns per play than anyone in the history of the NFL. Caught another touchdown here, went over 100 yards. Great game for Rob Gronkowski. He's matchup proof, just like Antonio Brown, and a staple of your lineups if you can put him in. If you can find savings elsewhere. Larry Fitzgerald, this is the guy that had the big week. If you didn't have him, you were in trouble. 8 catches, 112 yards, 3 touchdowns. Monster week for Larry Fitzgerald. I think he's a guy that you always have to consider. He's a guy that is going to do extremely well in that offense, especially if they can give Carson Palmer time. He definitely does not look like a fantasy zombie. He looks like the Larry Fitzgerald of old, and I'm hoping he can have some big weeks ahead so he caps off these first 2 weeks with a huge season overall for Larry Fitzgerald. And finally, the Rams D. This was a dud, complete dud in the lineup. So a couple duds here and still took home $2 million because they nailed the receivers here for the Dugan brothers. Rams D, I love them going forward this year, but definitely kind of a... they beat the Seattle at home, and a huge win for them, and then they go into Washington, classic letdown spot, and Washington definitely took advantage of that, beat them down pretty good. Not a good game at all, but it did not matter for the Dugan brothers. They took home $2 million with 246.18 points. great job nailing D'Angelo Williams, and then just totally nailed the receivers with Benjamin, Brown, Edelman, Gronkowski, and Fitzgerald. So let's go to a qualifier here. Wilso166 took home a $15 million Fantasy World Championship qualifier. Only $3, as you can see here, and now he's going to have a chance to win $5 million in this World Championship. So big congrats to Wilso166. Love the lineup construction here. You can see Tom Brady was his quarterback. Great game from Tom Brady. Matchup proof. He's on a mission this year and certainly had a huge game with 3 touchdowns and 466 yards passing. He's just the man. Probably the greatest quarterback of all time, which I know will make all the guys in the DraftKings office happy to hear. All huge homers, especially Ethan over there, who we have to shout out yet again. All right, running backs. Carlos Hyde, bust this week. Very heavily owned, 35% owned here. Not a great game, got hurt. Huge game week 1. Helped a lot of people win a lot of money week 1. Definitely a popular play, but not a big game at all. 13 carries, 43 yards. Did have 4 catches. If he's healthy, he's going to be a viable play going forward. Just have to make sure he's healthy after this week, and certainly a guy you can look to plug in week 3 and going forward. Not a great game, but I expect him to have a big game or 2 going forward. D'Angelo Williams, we already looked at him. I'm not going to say much more, but must play this week. And keep an eye out, though, with D'Angelo Williams. Le'Veon Bell is coming back, so temper your expectations for him, as Le'Veon Bell is the workhorse there in Pittsburgh. So, great week for D'Angelo, but it'll be hard for him to replicate this going forward. Travis Benjamin, again, we looked at him before. He was a must-play if you wanted to win these tournaments. Great week, 2 touchdowns from Johnny Manziel on the punt return touchdown. Travis Benjamin, elite play in week 2. Antonio Brown, talked about him as well. I can't say enough about this guy. He's a stud every week. Between Antonio Brown and Gronkowski, those are the 2 guys I'm trying to jam into my lineup regardless of price, just because they're so consistent and their upside is so big. Julian Edelman and Rob Gronkowski here. Love this play. Love the lineup construction here by Wilso166. Did the double stack with Tom Brady and Edelman. It paid big dividends. Edelman had the big game there with 11 catches. We talked about him. Rob Gronkowski, you can see him on the playbook. He's all over DraftKings, big DraftKings supporter, and he loves making the DraftKings owners happy, as well as Patriots fans. 7 catches, 113 yards, and a touchdown. Enough can't be said about him. Play him in cash games, play him in tournaments. Rob Gronkowski is an elite play regardless of matchup. Ted Ginn Jr., this is an interesting one. 0.7% owned. Had the big touchdown here. And didn't do terrible, didn't do great. 14 fantasy points, but enough to get the win here for Wilso166. And then the Jets defense really brought him home on Monday Night Football. Must have been a sick sweat for him. Congrats again. They had a big game against Andrew Luck, which is shocking on the road. You don't see defenses do too well against the Colts in Indianapolis, but the Jets have an elite defense and nice contrarian play here, 1.1% owned. Thanks for tuning in. Make sure to check back next week. I'll be doing another lineup review, and like and subscribe for more of my DFS tips and strategies at DKTV.